Tantor Audio presents Shadowsinger by L.E. Modesitt, Jr. Narrated by Amy Landon. 1. Monsus Monsur. Heavy wet flakes drift past the windows the Leitfjord's study, each window hung with maroon velvet drawn back to reveal an early spring snow that has already dropped more than half a yard of whiteness on the city and on the ice that still covers the river Toxel. The man who stands before the windows, looking out, wears a sky-blue tunic with a silver chain bearing the amulet seal of the Leitfjord of Monsur around his neck, and a mourning band of black and maroon upon his left arm. For a moment, his hard green eyes flick to the ice and snow-covered river that cuts through the city, if well below and beyond the hill on which the palace rests. Then he turns, standing beside the polished wooden desk that has graced this study for 3 generations, and asks, "You think Nezaria will fall before harvest?" "As matters now proceed, it is most likely," replies the trim over-captain in the maroon uniform of the Monsoran Lancers. There are but a few streaks of raven black amid the silver gray of the Lancer's short hair. His thin eyebrows are silvered as well, but the dark eyes are deep and intent. "Despite the efforts of the Sorceress of Defalk, Aerelia and Aniol hold but an area little more than 100 decks around Desaria." "If we dispatch the 50 companies of Lancers from Undaval, then what, Basil?" Kestrin runs his right hand through short-cropped brown hair that is already half gray, although he will not reach his full 2nd score of years until the turn of the following spring. "Are you willing to risk all 50 companies, and to slaughter all those who do not support your sister and her daughter?" Kestrin tilts his head slightly as he studies Basil. "If I must." "You must. You must also avoid facing the sorcerer Lord Belmar. He is strong enough to dispatch all your Lancers with his spells." "Unless we can catch him in a snowstorm or the rain." Kestrin laughs. "You risk much if you send your Lancers into Nezaria," cautions the older man. "I risk more if I do not." "Your seers report that the sea priests are readying a fleet to sail from the Ost-Isles," reports Basil. "They are doubtless sailing eastward, but not to Monsur." Basil raises his eyebrows, but does not speak. Outside the private study of the Leitfjord, the wind moans. The snowflakes are smaller and falling faster, and the light dims as the clouds overhead darken, as if winter is returning to Monsus. "This Secca, Lord Robero's new Sorceress-Protector of the East. She has destroyed all the Sturrinnese vessels that had threatened Leitwar. Do you think that the Maitre of Sturinn will decide to invade us, while he has forces in Dumar that are threatened by the sorceress?" "She remains in Ancora for the moment." Basil pauses. "Yet it is most likely that she will travel to Dumar, and use her sorcery against the sea priests there before the Mater can reinforce them. That will not be easy for her. The Mater can use the sea to land more sorcerers and Lancers, but it will be weeks, if not longer, before the snows melt enough for Lord Robero to send reinforcements to Lady Secca." "He will not send them even then," predicts Kestrin. "He fears Belmar as much as the Sturrinnese. Lady Secca has been successful without further aid. Lady Claire is slowly losing in Nezaria, as you have pointed out, and Aerelia and Aniol may have to flee before long." "Where?" Kestrin sighs. "Perhaps to Nordway." "It is yet winter there." "And you question that I should send Lancers into Nezaria?" "I cannot see how you could do otherwise, when you can. They cannot cross the snows of the Mid-Pass yet." Basil shakes his head. "If you do not dispatch them once the snows melt, Belmar will take all of Nezaria by midsummer. But If he is as bright as he seems, he will turn to face your lancers in order to destroy them." "They must not face him. Their task is to destroy those who rebelled against Erilya." Kestran's voice is hard. "If he turns, then the Sorceress of Defalk may be able to strengthen Erilya's hold on the north and east." "That is possible," Basil concedes, his voice neutral. "Not likely, but possible," Kestran replies with a grim laugh. "Better that than we do nothing. The Lady Secca may yet retake Dumar from the Sturrinnese, but this Belmar is their tool, and even she will be hard-pressed if Nezaria falls and the Sturrinnese reinforcements land in Nariel." "Because she will be caught between him and the Sturrinnese?" The Leitfjord nods slowly. "Because we will then face the Sea Priests alone." Outside the study, in the growing darkness, the moaning of the returning winter wind rises with the night. 2. The late morning sunlight poured over the two-story structure that held the matriarch's guest quarters, but the wide second-story windows that faced west were still in shadow. The air in the main chamber was hot and still, foreshadowing summer in Ancora, although by the turn of the seasons, spring had even yet to arrive. Rather than using the small working desk that faced away from the leftmost of the three windows, Secca had seated herself at the circular golden oak conference table, her back to the windows. Alcaran sat on the opposite side of the table, leaving 4 chairs vacant. The tiled hearth on the south wall held several logs set on a pair of heavy iron andirons, but it had been weeks since Secca had needed a fire. The petite and red-headed sorceress looked at the rose that lay on top of the papers before her on the conference table. A perfect white rose, appearing so delicate that the slightest breeze would rip off the petals. But like so much in Leitwar, the rose was not what it seemed, for the petals were of white bronze and the stem of a greenish iron, and it had been Alcaran's love gift to her, one she had never expected. Her amber eyes went from the rose to Alcaran, narrow-waisted and broad-shouldered, almost too short for his breadth to be handsome, yet not stocky, with short-cut brown hair and gray-blue eyes. He wore the pale blue Ranoan uniform and the collar insignia of an overcaptain. As he felt Secca's eyes upon him, he looked up from the map he had been studying and smiled warmly. In spite of herself, Secca flushed. "I do the same thing," he said with a slight laugh, adding, "when you look at me." She shook her head. "It is hard to get used to." "I know. No one ever looked at me that way." Secca wondered about that, and yet she didn't. Alcaran was barely a head taller than she was, and he was striking, but not necessarily handsome. He was a largely untrained sorcerer in a land that feared sorcery, and a strong man in a land ruled by women. "We still need a consorting ceremony," she said slowly. "You sound dubious, my lady. Am I that much of a burden to bear?" At the mock woeful tone of his voice and the twinkle in his eyes, Secca laughed. "You are no burden, far from that. Still, it is strange." Alcaran waited, his smile encouraging her to speak. "It is strange, and it is not. After these years, I had not thought to find love." "Though I have not traveled as you have, my lady," he replied gently. "Neither had I." "I had thought, were I ever to be consorted, it would be in Falkor or Flossbend or even Loiso, not in a strange land." "We could wait," he suggested. "I would not wish to rush you into such." Secca shook her head. Lady Anna waited even to acknowledge her love for Lord Jex, and I fear she lost years of happiness because she delayed. A sad smile crossed Secca's lips as she thought of the woman who had been more than a mentor, more than a teacher, a mother as well, in fact, if not in name. Secca doubted that she would ever recall Anna without love, emptiness, and a sense of regret that she had not told Anna how much the older woman had meant to her. After a silence, Secca added, "I need you, both for myself and for what we do. I would not have it said that our alliance was disharmonious or merely of bodily needs." Alcaran raised his eyebrows. Secca found herself flushing again, wondering how she had been able to ignore the sheer magnetism of her consort-to-be for as long as she had. "I did not say—" She laughed once more, shaking her head as she did. Alcaran laughed as well. As the moment of shared joy passed, Secca cleared her throat gently, repeating, "We must have a consorting ceremony before we leave Ancora." "Because you're a lady of Defalk." "And so that the ladies of the shadows know that I'm going to carry you off away from Ranwick." Secca smiled mischievously for a moment. "Does the matriarch perform such ceremonies?" "Seldom, but she can." "Surely she would do that for a beloved cousin." "She would more likely do so to make sure her beloved cousin was leaving Ancora forever," replied Alcaran dryly as he rose from the chair and stepped back, stretching, before looking past Secca toward the windows and the harbor beyond. "I think she would like to see you happy," Secca said.
"Oh, that she would. Happy with a lovely woman and a beautiful sorceress, and happily gone from Ancora and on our way to save Leetwar from the scourge of the sea priests, with song sorceries used to great effect elsewhere."
Secca nodded agreement, even as she sensed the underlying bitterness. But she would perform the consorting ceremony.
"I am most certain she would."
"I will send her a request by messenger," replied the petite redhead, "after we meet with the others."
"Will you also send a message to Lord Robero?"
"Yes, but not by sorcery, and not too soon. Perhaps I will wait to tell him personally." Secca grinned. "He did say that I needed to consider the matter of heirs." Alcaran's mouth opened. Secca laughed once more. "Not now, but with you able to do sorcery, I could have children without fearing all would be after me while I was weakened."
"I am not,"
he replied slowly. "You can certainly sing a scrying spell already," Secca pointed out. "That is not forbidden, even by the ladies of the shadows."
"The idea of greater sorcery, it feels strange," Alcaran replied.
"Best you get used to it, if we are to contend with the sea priests." Secca eased to the working desk, bent over, and lifted the lutar from the case beside the left end of the desk. She began to check the tuning.
"You want me to try a scrying spell now?"
he asked. "Why not? We need to check on the Sturrinnese ships before we meet with the others. I'll do the first one, and then I'll write the words for the second."
"You have high visions of my ability."
Secca shook her head. "I know what you can do." She pulled on the copper-tipped leather gloves, then stepped to the conference table and looked down at the scrying glass in the middle before clearing her throat. She'd already run through a series of vocalises before Alcaran had arrived, and they should have been enough for scrying spells. Cording the lutar, she sang, "Mirror, mirror, show me clear and as before any ships of Sturinn near Leetwar's shore." Even after Secca had finished the spell and lowered the lutar, the mirror remained blank silver, showing only the white plaster of the ceiling. Secca frowned, then handed the lutar to Alcaran. As he strummed it and hummed the spell melody, Secca dipped the quill in the inkwell and then jotted down the words she held in her mind. Careful not to tilt the paper or brush the wet ink, she set the sheet on the table between Alcaran and the scrying glass. He studied the words and ran his own chords, not quite like hers, mouthing the words silently. Finally, he sang the spell in his true and light baritone voice. "Show me now, most clear and as must be, ships of Sturinn near our southern sea." The glass remained blank. Secca jotted a third spell, one asking to see Sturini's ships in the western sea near Mansour. Even after Alcaran sang it in his true baritone, the glass came up equally blank. "My singing?" he asked. "I think not. Try this one." She slipped a fourth spell before him. "If this doesn't work, you get to try it again," he said. "It will work." He raised his eyebrows for a moment, then concentrated on the spell. "Show us clear and show us bright, ships of Sturinn that share Ostile's light." The glass displayed a bird's-eye view of a wide harbor filled with vessels. Secca swallowed. Never had she seen so many ships in one place, even through a scrying glass. "You see, you can do it as well as I." "I can do it, but not so well," he countered. After trying to count the vessels in the glass, she lifted her eyes. "Can you do a release spell?" "It will fade without it," he pointed out. "But it takes energy from you. The release spell ends the drain immediately." He frowned, then sang, courting the lutar. "Release this vision of what we see, and let the glass a plain mirror be." Secca laughed. "I haven't heard that one." "I couldn't remember yours," Alcaran confessed, "so I made that one up." "That just shows you are a sorcerer, no matter what you say." "Don't tell the ladies of the shadows, thank you." "I won't." Secca frowned. "I lost count at 70 ships." "The spell showed that all those ships are still being readied in the Ostiles," Alcaran pointed out. "Right now?" A solid thwap on the door interrupted their conversation. "The Lady Regina is here, Lady Secca," called Islin, the lancer stationed outside her door. "Have her enter." The tall blonde sorceress, the youngest of all the full sorceresses of Defalk, and not even a year beyond being more than an apprentice, stepped into the main room of the guest chamber, inclining her head to Secca and then to Alcaran. Her green eyes smiled with her mouth. "Wilton and the chief players will be here shortly." "Has your glass—" Secca shook her head. "You can tell us all at once when they arrive." Regina, more than 15 years younger than Secca and nearly a head taller, moved toward the conference table with the kind of tall grace that the all-too-petite Secca had often envied in others. "It's most pleasant outside, if with a chill breeze." "It looks to be," Secca admitted. "You should get out more often, lady," suggested the younger sorceress.
"The chief players," announced Islin.
Spared the need for a response, Secca replied, "Have them enter." The gray-haired Palian stepped through the door, her light gray eyes offering a smile as they passed over Secca and Alcaran. Delvor followed, his lank brown hair flopping over his forehead. Both inclined their heads to Secca and to Alcaran and Regina, if slightly less deferentially. 2 steps behind came Wilton, the overcaptain of Secca's undermanned 4 companies of lancers. The overcaptain nodded reverently, if stiffly, to Secca. Secca waited for Regina and the other 3 to seat themselves before she began, slowly. "The matriarch has gathered crews for some of the Sturini's ships." As she spoke, she found herself thinking again how dearly the spell that had destroyed the Sturini's sailors and armsmen had cost her. Yet, had Alcaran not offered his own life with Darksong to save hers, she never would have known the depth of his love. Still, remembering how she had felt sprawled on the ship's deck, dying, she almost shivered, and she had to swallow before continuing. "And there are also another 50 of Ranawan ships that will accompany us when we leave for Dumar."
"Are there other Sturrinese warships near?" asked Wilton.
Secca nodded to Alcaran.
"There are none near Leetwar," explained the Rannoan over-captain. "The glass shows that the Maitre gathers ships in the main harbor of the Ost Isles. That is a voyage of 2 weeks with the most favorable of winds." "The seas are clear," pointed out Wilton, "but the sea priests hold Nariel and the coast all the way east to the ancient cliffs, do they not?"
Secca nodded. "We will have to use the glass to find a landing where we will not have to fight our way ashore. There are few Sturrinese lancers on the lowland coasts west of Nariel. It's a longer voyage, but there are roads north to Envarel."
"They could take Envarel any day, could they not?"
pressed the over-captain.
"Not with the lancers they have within 50 decks of that city," replied Alcaran. "They have sent companies of lancers throughout Dumar to root out those who oppose them. Even if they tried to regroup the very day we set sail for Dumar, they could not gather more than 20 companies and send them to the coast by the time we land." "This you are sure of?" "It might be 15, it might be 25,
Alcaran conceded. "That is why we need to sail as soon as we can," Secca said. "We cannot count on the Sturrinese to keep their forces spread, and we do not wish to wait until another fleet is gathered and filled with armsmen and lancers. And drummers and sorcerers," she added to herself.
"How long will that be?"
asked Palian. "I hope not long," Secca replied. "I meet with the matriarch tomorrow, and we will see." She turned her eyes back to Wilton. "Can all be ready within the week?"
"We can be ready,"
the Defalcan over-captain responded. Secca looked to Alcaran. "And the South women?"
"They have been ready for several days. A few more days will help in training the new recruits."
"Recruits?"
asked Wilton.
"Among the younger South women there has been no dearth of volunteers to go fight the Sturrinese. Captain Delsetta and Captain Perron have been able to be most selective in those they accepted."
Wilton nodded slowly, almost stolidly. To his left, Palian offered a knowing smile, while Delvor bobbed his head and then pushed back the lock of brown hair that always fell across his forehead, and always had in the score of years Secca had known him. Secca stood. "We'll meet after I've talked to the matriarch. Then we should be able to finish planning how we can retake Dumar." As the chief players, Wilton and Regina, stood and then slipped out, Secca kept a smile on her face, despite the near absurdity of what she had so blithely proposed. With perhaps a half-score of ships, 6 companies of lancers, 2 groups of players, and 3 sorcerers, she was talking about reconquering a land held by more than 100 companies of Sturrinese lancers, supported by dozens of Darksong drum sorcerers. While she might expect 2 companies of South women, her own 4 companies of lancers were already well under strength, and she could expect few, if any, reinforcements, while her enemy gathered a fleet of between 2 and 4 warships and transports and scores more companies of armsmen and lancers. To the north of Dumar in Nezaria, a rebellion raged, and if that turned out badly, she might find another sorcerer arrayed against her, one who had powers similar to her own, and interests far closer to those of the Maitre of Sturinn. The smile remained, and she said nothing until the door closed. Then she sighed as she turned to the window and looked toward the harbor, although she could see only the masts of the ships tied at the piers. "Everyone thinks we can do this," she said slowly.
"If we cannot, the Leetwar we know is doomed,"
Alcaran said, stepping up behind her and slipping his arms around her waist, if loosely. "If we can, it is also doomed," she replied softly.
"I know."
For a long moment, they stood together, enjoying the moment before Secca turned in Alcaran's arms, hugged him and kissed his cheek. Then she slipped from his loose grasp and stepped back toward the conference table, looking down at the papers and scrolls. With the new recruits, the South women will be nearly as strong as my lancers. Alcaran shook his head.
You still have nearly 3 companies' worth.
And a very cautious overcaptain.
Wilton does not care that much for me,
Alcaran observed. We have talked about that before. He does not dislike you. He dislikes anything that is unknown or offers a risk. You are both. Secca tilted her head, thinking, realizing that even after all the years of seeing Wilton, she would be hard-pressed to describe the overcaptain, except in a general way. He affected neither beard nor mustache, and he was neither tall nor short, neither ample nor excessively slender. His eyes seemed to take on whatever color surrounded him, and his face was not oval or square or round or thin.
He is like too many in Incora these days, then.
Alcaran snorted.
They would have someone else bear the risk, essay the song sorcery, and then complain that the way in which their liberty was preserved was not to their liking.
That is true in all lands, perhaps in all worlds. Secca pulled out a sheet of parchment, then shook her head and took one of the crude sheets of brown paper. We still need to send a request to the matriarch.
We.
It takes a man and a woman to be consorted. We both should sign the request. Alcaran laughed.
That way, neither those in Defalk nor those in Ranwick will be pleased.
Are they ever? Secca raised her eyebrows. They both laughed. 3. Way Nordway. Outside the window of the study, the light from the late winter sun reflects in all directions from the glaze ice coating the 2-yard-deep snow that covers the city and the ice on both the River Nord and Verizen Bay. Because of the glare, the dark window shutters are almost entirely closed, except for a slit where they meet. The woman who sits at the desk of polished ebon wood, her back to the window and the thin line of bright light, has fine silver hair and dark black eyes. Once, her hair was as dark as her eyes, but those eyes, set as they are in a finely wrinkled skin, still are clear and miss little. Leader Ashtar, the Lady of the Shadows. The voice comes from outside the closed study door. Before answering the announcement, Ashtar covers her mouth with a dark green cloth and coughs, once, twice, then sets the cloth aside.
Enter.
Her voice is firm and clear. The woman who enters is cloaked in black, with a black hood and a gauze-like black veil. The council leader of Way nods to the polished wooden armchairs across the ebony desk from her, and waits for the woman in the dark hood to seat herself. The Lady of the Shadows takes the seat farthest to Ashtar's left, well away from the thin line of glaring light.
You wished to see me?
Leader Ashtar, you know well our concerns about sorcery. As Ashtar nods, her fingers find the polished black agate oval on the desk. Defalk's Sorceress-Protector of the East has stretched the harmonies until all Erd vibrated, and then the illegitimate sorcerer of Ranwick used dark song to save her from her folly.
That is what the seers reported,
Ashtar replies mildly. Is that all you have to say?
She destroyed all the Sturrinese warships in the ocean along the south coast of Leetwar. That was in our interest. Do you wish me to condemn that? Asks the council leader.
This time it benefited us. Do you not think that the minion lords thought the same when they first unleashed song sorcery?
That may be, but there is little I can do about this. What do you wish of me?
At the very least, you could send a messenger to Lord Robero.
A crooked smile crosses Ashtar's lips. What will I tell him? That he must forbid his sorceresses from the sorcery that is all that keeps his realm from falling to the sea.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?